In the Great Lakes region, we hold the all-important one-day meeting in Uganda to discuss peace and security. One of the Great Lakes countries, the Democratic Republic of Congo, will go to elections in December, and many have raised concerns about the security situation in that country. For more on the story, let's cross live to our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, who is at the Sipeke Resort in Uganda. Sophie, a very good morning to you. What time is it where you are?
Good morning, Desiree. I think we are an hour ahead of you guys in South Africa.
Now, tell us, the Great Lakes region, which countries are part of this, and why is it important to South Africa?
Well, the Great Lakes region includes countries such as Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, the DRC. And these are the countries that are working together to try and bring peace in the DRC. South Africa is involved because from long ago, you know that our former president Nelson Mandela was involved in bringing peace in this region when he called a meeting between the then late President Mobutu Sese Seko and Laurent Kabila. And then his successor, President Thabo Mbeki, also was involved when he was the head of state. You'd recall that South Africa hosted the Congolese dialogue in Sun City, which led to the first election or democratic election in the DRC. South Africa continues to be involved in the DRC. You know very well that we have troops in the DRC currently. It is for that reason the Minister of Defense, Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, is leading a South African delegation to these talks. It's a Great Lakes region meeting looking at the security in general in the Great Lakes. Therefore, countries such as Burundi, South Sudan, Central African Republic, and of course the DRC will table reports in terms of progress made in trying to ensure that there's peace in those countries. And South Africa, when you look at the history, has been involved in the peace process in South Sudan, in the Central African Republic, in the DRC, and in Burundi. It is for that reason we have South African delegation here. But the SADC region is also represented because DRC is part of the SADC region. You also have the United Nations representative here, and this week, again, we know very well that the Security Council representatives will be in the DRC to get first-hand information in terms of the state of readiness of the DRC going to the elections. Therefore, this meeting is quite important because it will also look at whether the DRC is ready and there is security that will ensure that elections are free and fair.
Sophie, this high-level meeting of the Great Lakes, is it a scheduled meeting or is it a response to hotspots and threats?
Members of the Great Lakes region and under the auspice of the AU meet once a year, and this is a normal annual meeting. But of course, because of the developments in the DRC, high on the agenda will be the DRC state of readiness going to the elections.
Uganda is the host country, but there are also issues in relation to that country. The long term of its current president, Yoweri Museveni, human rights issues, are those going to be discussed?
Well, this has got nothing to do with the country as the host. But of course, when we spoke to people in the streets yesterday, we spoke to Ugandans. They are quite concerned about the situation here. You have the human rights activists who are concerned about the human rights violation in this country. We will try and speak to the authorities here in Uganda. We have already made a request to speak to the Ugandan president, Yoweri Museveni, but we are still waiting for confirmation whether it will be possible for us to speak to President Museveni. You know very well that when you look at the media reports, every day there are protests, particularly journalists are concerned that they are not able to do the work as free as they should. But we'll be trying to speak to activists, but also to speak to the Ugandan government to give them the right to reply in terms of what's happening here. But it will depend whether they are available. But you are correct. When we spoke to people here, they are really worried about the situation in Uganda. But that is not part of the agenda. The agenda is about these other main hotspots in this region. That is your Central African Republic, South Sudan, and the preparations for elections in the DRC.
Everyone is watching South Sudan and developments there. What kind of solutions can we hope can come out of this meeting for that country and bringing it to normalcy?
I think they will have to take stock in terms of the political situation in the DRC, whether the political situation is conducive for free and fair elections. And then they will have to discuss the issue of security. It is for that reason you have ministers of defense from different countries represented here who form part of the Great Lakes region. And South Africa, having troops in that country, is also represented by Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. There were reports that there are people or countries that are pushing that South Africa should scale down in terms of the deployment in the DRC. But when we spoke to the Minister of Defense at the UN a week ago, he indicated that they don't agree with that proposal because they feel that this will compromise the capacity and the security of those who will be left behind to ensure that there's peace and security. You'll know that in terms of the mandate of the force, and there is an intervention force in the DRC. Therefore, if you don't capacitate them, there is going to be problems. And we've received reports that in some areas in the DRC, there are pockets of conflicts, and therefore they will have to really deliberate in terms of how are they going to ensure that the voters in the DRC will be able to exercise their rights free.
Sophie, will continue to talk to you as the meeting unfolds. But just to wrap up, just give us detail, the program, who's talking, what are they speaking about, but also how can our South African viewers interact with this story so that it's meaningful?
The president of Uganda as a host is going to open the session, give an indication what's likely to transpire in the meeting, and of course different countries will make presentations. And for our viewers, not only in South Africa but around the continent, you know very well you are able to watch SABC 404 in 50 African countries. You can follow us on at African Perspec 1, at African Perspec 1, because on Wednesday, our focus in the evening at 9:30 p.m., we will be looking at peace and security in the DRC and whether is DRC ready for elections. Therefore, our viewers can make their contribution or they can comment. You can send your comments to at African Perspec 1, at African Perspec 1. We will be able to go through those contributions and the comments on Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. during our special slot that looks at African issues, African perspective.
Our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, speaking to us from Uganda on the high-level meeting of the Great Lakes region. And as she said there, you already know what content will be on African Perspective this Wednesday.